Hello, my name is Sherry Cassidy, and I'm a family lawyer and a certified specialist in divorce law in California. If you are considering divorce, you may soon find yourself in my office or the office of someone like me. I want to talk about some of the advice that I think is important in the beginning of the divorce process. What I have found in my 15 years of doing divorce work is that the decisions you make early in the process will be critical to how the divorce process develops for you and your family. Despite your best intentions, you can actually damage the interests that you most want to protect in how you initially approach the divorce. The well-being of your children, as well as your financial interests, can be damaged by escalating conflict between you and your spouse. For example, you may be concerned about your children's schedule of how much time they will spend with each parent. And what we have found is that almost any schedule has less impact on the children than the level of conflict between their parents in determining how the children ultimately fare with the divorce. What people tend not to recognize is that even though you're getting a divorce, you and your spouse have a number of common interests, first and foremost your children, but also the preservation of your financial assets. A more cooperative process can lead to a better result for both parties. Working together to resolve the divorce is certainly not easy, and it may require resolving some of the very problems that led to the divorce in the first place. But the more you can cooperate and keep the conflict down, the less the divorce will cost you and your family, both financially and emotionally. Every situation is different, and you will need to decide what is right for your situation. But there are a variety of resources and many ways to resolve your differences that you should be aware of as you enter into this process. There's a saying that at the beginning of the divorce, the client has the money and the lawyer has the knowledge and experience. And at the end of the divorce, the lawyer has the money and the client has the knowledge and experience. What I'd like to do is give you an advance opportunity to gain some of the knowledge and experience and perhaps save yourselves some anguish and some money in the process. And how you approach the divorce process will be just as important as some of the actual agreements that you make during the process. Certainly, you will be involved with various professionals in this process, and those services will be critical to protect your concerns. The trick is to determine the appropriate level of service that you need to successfully navigate the divorce process. First of all, divorce is a process, not an event. And similar to marriage, we tend to focus on the wedding day, for example, as the big event. And we don't focus on the fact that marriage is a process of building a relationship and a family over time. That process is not ended in a day. Divorce is a major life transition as well as a potentially complex legal transaction, and it will take time to work through to completion. If you have children, you will always have a relationship with your spouse, first as co-parents and hopefully someday as co-grandparents. How you approach the divorce process and the relationships that you develop during the divorce will have an impact on your long-term relationships together. I have a case now where I'm serving as an arbitrator, and the parents are in such intense conflict with each other that even as the arbitrator, I find myself anxious and uncomfortable dealing with them. Imagine how their children feel being caught in the middle of that kind of a conflict.
As a mental health professional who works primarily with parents and children going through divorce, I first want to acknowledge that the divorce transition is very difficult, challenging, and stressful for families. The goal of the divorce transition is a restructuring of the family system. The challenge is to have a functional family system at mom's house, a functional family system at dad's house, and some linkage, something going on between those households that's also functional. Parents also have to develop what we call a co-parenting relationship, and that is essentially information sharing and decision making that helps the parents raise their children cooperatively and effectively. What studies say time and time again is that this co-parenting relationship, if it is conflicted, has the most detrimental impact on kids' growth and development.
If you have a dispute with your spouse or former spouse with regard to your children, the worst place to resolve that dispute is in a trial on that issue. I have personally never seen a trial on a contested custody or visitation issue. In every case, the parties are worse off after it's over than they were before they went into court on that issue. And the reason is because it's an adversary proceeding. It tends to end up being one where each party is pointing fingers at the other, and instead of focusing on what's the best interest of the child, the focus is on what's wrong with the other party.
There's an expression of pulling the roof down on both our heads, and sometimes one spouse or both is willing to make a financial decision that is really not in their best interest, simply to act out their anger against the other spouse. So keeping the conflict in check is going to be critical to having a constructive process for both you and your family. The first major decision, of course, is whether to get a divorce. And if your spouse has already decided on a divorce, in California, you don't really have a choice because one person alone can make that decision. But it's not a decision to be made lightly. And over my years of practice, I have found that no one else can judge someone's decision to divorce except the people who are living it. But the reality is that all good marriages go through periods of struggle and difficult times, and some conflict is natural in every marriage. The challenge is to determine if this is a healthy struggle that can be resolved, or whether the relationship has become destructive and is really better ended. It is important that you get information and you really take time to make a clear decision.